It's an insane day in the world of Magic the Gathering. Wizards of the Coast has just issued the newest rounds of bannings, and guess what? Standard just got nuked from orbit. This is one of the craziest ban announcements I've seen in a long time.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for a wild installment of Mega Magic News. This is the end of June banned and restricted update. Wizards of the Coast has taken a sledgehammer to Standard in a very surprising way and clean swept out a bunch of the playable decks. Wait until you see. There are 7 different cards that have been banned in Standard. Wizards goes over the logic behind it, and on top of that, they admit that they've screwed up in a major way and that they have to actually change how they're doing bannings somewhat going forward. Some of the stuff that you hear today will make you angry. Some of the stuff you hear will make you laugh. But there is no denying that this is most assuredly a historic banned and restricted announcement. So, with no further ado, my friends, let's get to the bannings. We're starting out with the list of the 7 cards that are being banned in Standard. Corey Steelcutter, Abuelo's Awakening, Monstrous Rage, Heartfire Hero, Up the Beanstalk, Hopeless Nightmare, and This Town Ain't Big Enough. Now, notice a bunch of these are commons and uncommons, which really speaks to the crazy power level that Magic has reached. Now, this article is huge. I'm just going to be cutting to the important parts. So there is a lead up here where they talk about when the last ban announcement happened and how this basically represents their once a year banning. But they specifically mention that Corey Steelcutter had a 40% representation of the Standard metagame of the Pro Tour Final Fantasy event that just happened. And they do specifically say that with cards like Corey Steelcutter, they might actually need to do emergency bans going forward. So just bear that in mind. Corey Steelcutter has been out for what, a month and a half, and it already needs to go because everything is super unbalanced, right? So they talk here about how Magebane Lizard is basically showing up in crazy numbers because it works really well against Prowess, and Prowess has been taking off because of Corey Steelcutter. 1 red and 1 for an artifact equipment that gives equipped creature +1/+1, trample and haste, equips for 2 mana, and most importantly, whenever you cast your second spell each turn, create a 1/1 white monk creature token with prowess, you may attach this equipment to it. So this just generates little donks, beefs guys up way too easily, and lets Red run all the way down the street with the games, right? Because at this point, Red has just gotten so many tools. we knew that just like something like Monstrous Rage had to go, but ultimately Wizards decided they had to scour this whole thing down to bedrock. So Red got hit hard, which honestly makes perfect sense in this situation, right? So it says here, the release of Corey Steelcutter reshaped the landscape of Standard. It's very challenging to predict what will happen to the metagame after its banning, but we have concerns the format may drift back to the format as it existed previously. So they're admitting that even before Corey Steelcutter, the format was dreadful. Wizards of the Coast has gotten into their head that no bans are better than bans, but then you get these formats where they've essentially become unplayable, right? So next up on the list, we are going to talk about Omniscience, okay? So for Omniscience basically has about 20% share of the metagame, it's saying. And Omniscience has kind of been around for here or there, you know, not really making that much of a difference. But then Abuelo's Awakening. 1 white, 3 and X sorcery. Return target artifact or non-aura enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. And make sure your virus blocking is up to date too. Nice timing on that. I don't even know if it popped up on the screen there, but it just blocked my view. So this basically lets you return an artifact or or enchantment from your graveyard, and it comes back with X +1/+1 counters on it. It's a 1/1 spirit with flying in addition to its others types. So you can basically slap your Omniscience out of your graveyard as a 1/1 using this. Big, like, I mean, it doesn't really matter that it's a 1/1 because Omniscience just says play all your spells for free. Go off, chief. So it basically, the idea is the combo deck is far too consistent because of the Awakening, so they're axing the Awakening. Next, we come to the one that we all knew. I mean, Monstrous Rage should have been gotten rid of earlier. Look at this. 1 red, instant. Target creature gets +2 power until end of turn. Create a monster roll as well and attach it to that creature. So if you have another roll on it, you get rid of it. But the more important part is that the enchanted creature with the roll on it gets +1/+1 and has trample. So this essentially, when you play it, is a +3/+1 and trample instant for 1 red that also says, by the way, next turn your guy still is bigger. Like, it's so dumb. Oh, and has trample, right? So this has been making big waves since Wild of Eldraine. It's one of the strongest and most efficient combat tricks to ever have been printed. We've enjoyed having a combat trick be a strong standard card, but it's clear that Monstrous Rage has overstayed its welcome. It's enabled combo-style aggro decks more than we would like, and has played a large role in lowering the fundamental turn in Standard and putting players under too much pressure too quickly. If you don't know what they mean by fundamental turn, they mean the turn where it actually matters. You might not know this, but once upon a time, you didn't have to come out the gates running in Magic the Gathering. You didn't have to have the best hand from turn 1 to stand a chance, or you were just done, right? But basically, Standard has moved up to the point where you know who's going to win by turn 2 or 3 if they haven't already won half the time. And that is not a good place for Standard, which is supposed to be the easy onboarding for people and is supposed to have a somewhat slower speed to it, right? So it says, it basically puts players under too much pressure too quickly, and in addition, the fact that it gains trample has decreased the utility of blocking in the format and greatly eroded the efficacy of defensive creatures as a counter strategy to aggressive decks. Oops, guys, we made it so that blockers don't matter. Like, how do you not see this coming? How do you not see this coming? Right? Like, you designed all the cards for all the years. You know what's in the format. This totally boils down, at least partially, to insane power creep, and then also their change into Standard being 3 years, right? So, Heartfire Hero. This one surprised me. I was not expecting them to go, like, full-on obliterate anything that the red players could use, but here we are. Heartfire Hero, 1 red for a 1/1. Whenever it becomes a target, a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 on it, and when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. You know, they were clamoring for some commander action with this, but this thing is bonkers. It's so bonkers. I'll cast Monstrous Rage on my Heartfire Hero. Oh, look, I put a +1/+1 on it. Oh, I put a +1/+1 on it for the Monstrous Rage. And the Monstrous Rage gives it +2/+0 until end of turn. So I'm swinging in for 5. And if you block it, guess what? It's going to die and you take 5. This thing got nerfed in Alchemy, already down to a 0/1. This is such a tight little package for 1 mana. So it's good. It is good that they decided to get rid of it. So it says Heartfire Hero has been another key piece of red aggressive deck strength throughout the last year's Standard. The curve of Heartfire Hero into Manifold Mouse puts the opponent under pressure immediately. Really? You mean a second turn dude that can give this bonkers boy double strike is a problem? How would you ever see that? Like, it says mouse and this says mouse and they're in the same set. Bro, you think that's an issue? I mean, come on, man. Additionally, Heartfire's trigger gives red decks significant resiliency to many kinds of removal. Its strength has shifted the format towards decks that can interact starting on turn 1 or 2, and decks that can leverage temporary lockdown as a powerful counterplay. We want red aggressive strategies to be a viable option in Standard, but Heartfire Hero has proven to have too much explosive power. Surprise! I love it. We discussed banning only Heartfire or Monstrous Rage, but ultimately decided banning both was the correct course of action. The 2 cards are both independently strong, and leaving either alone would make it likely that aggressive decks in the format would still be combo-style aggro decks with consistent explosive starts and a lot of burst damage potential. By banning both, we shift the aggressive strategy of the format away from combo-style aggro, decrease the interactional burden on non-aggressive decks in the format, and increase the number of viable cards in decks. It's bonkers to me. Obviously, they want like cheap mono red to always be an option, especially when it comes to arena, for people to be able to put together a deck that they can play quickly and just go bam, 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 I'm done. But they pushed red way too hard, bro. Way too hard. Now, speaking of push too hard, Up the Beanstalk. I can't believe that Up the Beanstalk actually has survived this long, right? So Up the Beanstalk is no stranger to the ban list, having been banned in Modern since 2023. Geez, I wonder why. An enchantment that costs 2, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card to replace it, and whenever you cast a spell that costs 5 or more, draw a card. Like, it's so gross. It's so gross. It's been clearly cemented as best-in-class source of card advantage for slower decks. It shares Corey Steelcutter's quality of being challenging to interact with profitably. You know what? Actually, speaking of challenging to interact with profitably, if you watched my last video, you would see that new Eldrazi spoiler that they did with Warp. And guess what? When you look at that card, it is very hard to interact with that card profitably. So this is something that Wizards of the Coast has been doing more and more and more. So it means that decks powered up by Up the Beanstalk are hard for many types of strategies to adapt to, which effectively eliminates them from the metagame. Basically, it all boils down to, we made a handful of decks way too powerful and no other decks can survive. That is the summary of it, right? So basically, the deck building puzzle of Up the Beanstalk has been solved so many times at this point, we expect it to be more monotonous than engaging, as more cost reduction cards may get released in future sets. Oh, really? Really? More cost reduction cards may get released in future sets. We know for a fact they can't help themselves. They love making free spells. They love making busted nonsense. So like, guys, we got way more busted craziness coming, and we know for a fact this is going to be crazy. Not, maybe something else is coming. You're the ones making the cards. You make them 2 to 5 years out. You're not fooling us, boys. You're not fooling us, right? So, I mean, that makes perfect sense. Now, next up, self-bounce decks have shifted a lot as the format has progressed, with a small, powerful core constant between iterations. Hopeless Nightmare. 1 black enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. When it's put into the graveyard from battlefield, scry 2, a black and 2, sack this. I remember when Hopeless Nightmare came out and I read it, and man, this is so much packed into 1 card. And actually, on top of that, take a moment to admire the gorgeous artwork on this. This is incredible. This guy's soul is like pouring out of his eyes, it looks like, during a Hopeless Nightmare. His body racked by pain, and his eyes are gone, but look at all the eyes staring at him from the inky blackness. Incredible artwork. So, Hopeless Nightmare is a key piece of the core, serving the role of a 1-mana trinket that's powerful to cast many times in a game. The pattern of constant discarded forces on the opponent is among the least fun elements of the deck, and shrinks the game in a way that makes it hard to come back from once the self-bounce deck gets going. In addition, Hopeless Nightmare provides the self-bounce decks with both interaction and damage, allowing the deck to position itself as a disruptive, aggressive deck. So, it's gone. And then, this town ain't big enough. 1 blue and 4 instant, 3 less to cast if it targets a permanent you control. Return up to 2 target non-land permanents to their owner's hand. Raise your hand if when this card came out, you had no idea that this would ever be an issue, because I'll fully put my hand up right here. You look at it and just like, okay, 5 mana, bouncing 2 guys, whoop-de-doo, bouncing 2 permanents, no big deal. I mean, yeah, you hit one of your opponent's permanents, only could cost 2, but this one flew under my radar. So, this one sees play in a bunch of different standard decks. It almost always is alongside Storm Chaser's Talent, and a 2-card package that's proven itself in a variety of shells. Most recently, this package played a role in the Is It Prowess deck, but before that, it was a key player in versions of the Self-Bounce Synergy deck that incorporated blue. When commonplace, it makes the format less fun through its unique ability to interact with any permanent-based strategy while still advancing its wielder's game plan. That is true. You can literally hit any permanent on the board. My brain just normally thought of it as 2 creatures because it shows creatures in the artwork, but it definitely is a powerful ability. While not a huge share of its overall power, the loop with Storm Chaser's Talent is particularly frustrating. It adds the threat of an endgame lockout to many matchups, making games less fun. Thus, it is banned. So, that makes sense to me. Now, at the end here, since we've talked about the bannings, they do sum it up by saying, it's been a little over 2 years since we announced the shift to a 3-year standard, thus completely unprepared for it. Remember, they shifted to a 3-year standard because they hadn't sold enough product and they wanted to dump old product on us that was about to rotate out of standard. They told us they had a bunch of plans to fix standard, told us it was going to be 3 years, and did nothing else other than saying, we're only going to do bans once a year and standard is 3 years. And they went, so none of our set design recently actually took that into account, and things are going to be what they are, right? So it says, we learned a lot from this, and this has given us 2 key little learnings we'll be carrying forward. First, with the larger card pool of 3-year standard, we need to be more precise with our 1-mana cards and our cards that synergize with 1-mana cards. 3 of the cards banned today cost 1 mana, and Corey Steelcutter wants to be played against all the cheapest spells. Remember, guys, this came out like 2 months ago tops, and it's already gotten banned. And it literally will say in here, specifically because of Corey Steelcutter, that they will be more likely to jump in with emergency bans if they are necessary, right? So they say standard is more fun when the stars of the game cost more than 1 or 2 1 or even 2 mana. Like, wow, what a mind-blowing thing to say, guys. We'll be taking steps to ensure it's true more often going forwards. Secondly, we need to scrutinize and be careful with the rate of cards that are challenging to interact with favorably. No, really? Really? You need to stop making cards that are pure gas, that draw to replace themselves, punish your opponent for destroying them, are impossible to destroy with crazy ward effects? Like, they constantly do this. This can't be a surprise. Really? We have to make cards that are easier to interact with? With the increased power level of decks in a larger format that is 3-year standard, decks are very capable of turning a small advantage into a snowball that ends the game. Strong cards that leave resources behind when dealt with, like Corey Steelcutter and Up the Beanstalk, reliably create that first small advantage. Identifying these cards and evaluating their strength in the context of their interactional requirements is a task that play design is incorporating into our process going forwards. It's like saying that up until now, they never realized that you get incremental advantage from cards. This is either blatant lies or just 100% ignorance, right? Like we didn't even know. How? How would you not know that you have to pay attention to cards building up and snowballing? It's been over 30 years of making this game, bro. 30 years. Okay, all right. That part tweaked me so hard the first time I read it. I'm like, you're just incorporating now that incremental advantage in cards that, oh, look at, I put it out and it sticks around and gives me stuff. It's, come on, man. Come on, bro. So, one last announcement for Standard. Considering our next Standard rotation won't be until early 2027, we'll be having 2 of our early rotation Standard banning windows before the next Standard rotation. You can expect one of these windows in about 18 months, right before rotation as usual. The other one will be in roughly 9 months, around the midway point. But we haven't decided on an exact date yet, and it could move around by a month or 2. We will clearly indicate which announcements will specifically take a deeper look at Standard. So, at least they're acknowledging to some degree that what they've done here is nightmarish. Their current way of doing things, where you end up with all 7 of these cards getting banned in one go, when some of these should have been gone beforehand or never been made. Heartfire Hero should have never been made this way. Monstrous Rage never should have been made this way. Up the Beanstalk never should have been made this way. All 3 of those, straight out the gates, shouldn't even exist, but they shouldn't have been allowed to persist for as long as they have, especially Up the Beanstalk. Like, are you kidding me? They absolutely know how bonkers that is. So this is an admission that, our current system isn't working, and buckle up. We got a whole nother year of this before we get into the sets designed for 3-year Standard. Now, when it comes to the other bannings, there's not really much going on overall, right? You take a look and you can see Pioneer, Modern, Legacy, Vintage, Pauper, 0 changes. Alchemy, they're going to rebalance Corey Steelcutter. Surprise, surprise. Pioneer, Tybalt's Trickery is banned in best of 1 only. It's a crazy combo enabler, right? And then Historic has Counterspell unbanned. I didn't realize that Historic had Counterspell banned, right? I mean, there's a lot of crazy powerful stuff in Historic. So did they just ban Counterspell straight out when they released it into Historic because they didn't want it to be overpowered? Is that what they did? I don't know. Either way, that wraps up all the bannings, all right? So to me, the choices that they've made here, a bunch of them are long overdue. This is an admission of the absolute incompetence that they have they have illustrated managing Standard, and they turn the format into mirror matches and just a completely unplayable wasteland. Let's be real, right? So that wraps up the news. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me. Appreciate you, my friends. Big shout out to all my patrons. You guys rule, and I will see you all in the next video.